Hello everyone, this is Peter from Franque de la Fuente Abogados, and joining me today, I'm very happy to invite Marc from Fluent Finance. Thanks for coming.
Peter. Thank you for the invite.
Nice to have you. So we are now on the topic of the country files, and now with the UK buyers. And I wanted to talk to Marc because, of course, as a regulated mortgage broker, we wanted to dig in a little bit deeper in the behavior and maybe the expectations and differences in regulations, etc., between from a UK perspective, UK buyers. So my idea is that we could start to talk a little bit about the regulations and let's say the traditions and the processes for applying for a mortgage in the UK, and then we compare it to Spain, and then we talk a little bit about the UK buyers.
No problem.
So first of all, for those who doesn't know you and your company, maybe you want to introduce yourself and Fluent Finance.
Sure. Okay. So my name is Marc Elliott. Was born in London. My mother is Spanish, from Madrid. So thanks to my mother, I'm able to do this job in a sense because I can speak both languages.
Yeah.
I got involved in the mortgage industry in the UK. I worked for a couple of companies. I actually became a financial advisor with Scottish Widows, and then I specialised in mortgages with a company called John Charcoal, which is one of the longest running mortgage brokers. In fact, they're going to celebrate their 50th anniversary in next year, I think. So I learned the mortgage industry over there, and in 2004 I was lucky enough to be offered a job as a mortgage broker in Spain because of the tools, the skills I have, the language skills and the knowledge that I gained and experience I gained in London. And in 2006, just before the credit crisis, I created a company, well, what is now known as Fluent Finance Abroad. I started trading as Fluent Finance Abroad, and I've been here ever since.
All right then, 2006.
2006, yeah.
Oh, yeah. So let's start then with regulations and the traditions in the UK. So if I'm a buyer in the UK, let's go start with the private, the individual, and I want to buy a property. Who do I contact in the UK? What is the traditions for starting the mortgage process in the UK?
You only have two options in the UK. You could go direct to the bank yourself and deal with a Nationwide or Santander Bank, whatever. That's fairly common. But over the last 20 years, more people are actually going to independent, regulated mortgage brokers.
Yeah.
There's a stat that I was looking at. 75% of all mortgages get arranged by independent mortgage brokers.
75%
of all mortgage business.
Of all mortgages?
Of all mortgage business.
Okay.
Which is huge.
Yeah.
When I was working in the UK, that was probably around about 40%. So there's been a massive growth in the mortgage, the figura, the character of the mortgage broker in the UK.
And why do you think that is?
Well, number one, they're highly regulated, so they're very knowledgeable, and obviously you have to be regulated. You have to demonstrate that you have a certain level of knowledge, but you also have to be regulated by the government and the FCA, and that means there's a trust element. And what a mortgage broker can do is obviously compart their knowledge, understand your situation, compart their knowledge, but also give you access to a number of different solutions, not just one. And that's the big problem. That's why mortgage brokers are becoming very valuable, because a bank will only try and fit you into their box and will only give you one solution. Maybe that solution isn't right, or maybe that solution doesn't work at all. And buying a property is serious business, as you know. So you need to make sure it's done in the right way.
And so the regulation then, the activity, mortgage activity, first of all, the company itself needs to be regulated to perform the activity, is that right, in the UK? In the UK,
yeah. The company needs to be registered with the FCA, and the individual has to be registered.
And then the individual then needs to pass some kind of exam or have a license, or?
Exactly right. So I passed what we call the Certificate of Mortgage Advice in Practice in the UK. I passed that in 2002. it actually got brought in 1997, and that is a prerequisite for anyone that wants to be involved in the mortgage business. You have to have your CMAP certificate.
And is that a certificate that could be removed if you've done mistakes, or?
Yeah, there's plenty of cases where bad actors have been found out and they've had their licenses removed. And they're either permanently struck off, like a doctor or a lawyer, or they're not allowed to practice for 5 years, depending on the seriousness of the actions.
Yeah. And the mortgage process itself, then, in the UK, and we can talk about the Spanish routines a bit later on, but you deal with your mortgage broker, and then I guess the mortgage broker is in contact with a few different creditors, the banks, I suppose. But the signature and the formalities of this, is a notary involved in any way, like it is in Spain, or is it directly with the bank?
So what happens is there are notaries in the UK, of course, but they're not involved in witnessing and making sure legal contracts are valid. That's only unique to Spain, France, Italy, I think. And everything in Spain has to be witnessed by a notary, it seems. In the UK, no. You have conveyancing lawyers that can look after both purchase contracts and mortgage contracts. And that happens externally. A mortgage broker will look after the mortgage, the conveyancing lawyer will look after legalities of actual the change of title.
So 75%, and that is companies and individuals, actually.
All
mortgages. So I assume then that the UK buyers are very familiar or used to work with mortgage brokers then.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, I mean, it's a huge amount of business. We're talking billions, billions.
And if you then have, let's say you bought your property, for different reasons you decided not to have a mortgage on that property. How about refinancing on your property in the UK?
Yeah, it's very, very easy. So you can capital raise, release equity, refinance for any legal purpose. They're not, as long as there's enough equity in there, and you have income to demonstrate that your ability to pay. Then most lenders will allow that up to, not too much of a LTV, but up to 75% is quite common.
All right.
So just to give you had €1 million property or £1 million property, and go to a lender, I would actually need to have a valid reason, and to release 75% of $1 million, they would want to do a due diligence as to what. So they would need some proof, but they could do that, no problem.
And the terms of every case is individual and different, depends on the lender, etc. But on an average, let's say, how long lending terms can you usually get in the UK in terms of years? So generally 25 years is the bog standard for any sort of capital repayment mortgage. But in the UK you have interest-only options, and which can be extended for indefinitely. Indefinitely.
Yeah.
That sounds similar to actually Sweden at least till now. All right then. And we mentioned here before when we were talking that there's a specific regulation when it comes to residential homes in the UK. Can you tell us a little bit about
this is a difference that I find interesting, and it explains a lot to me. So in the UK, the FCA are the ones that regulate mortgage advice and mortgages in general. But the only mortgages that are regulated by the FCA, that means the only mortgages that have stringent consumer protections, are mortgages that are for your own home, where you're going to live. Now in the UK, there's obviously a massive market for buy-to-let mortgages, but they're not regulated by the FCA. So buy-to-let mortgages are not regulated by the FCA, holiday lets are not regulated by the FCA, bridging finance on non-residential properties are not regulated. So for lenders it's quite interesting because they are more free to take possession of a property if the contract isn't adhered to. So if someone doesn't pay their promise that they make when they sign the mortgage agreement, it's a lot easier, a lot quicker for a lender to release their funds on non-regulated. The problem with Spain, depends how you look at it, is that the law here, which is the LCCI, la Ley de Contratos de Créditos Inmobiliarias, governs pretty much every single mortgage that gets done in Spain, whether it's residential or whether it's business. So if you purchase a property in your name and your intention is to rent it out long term or holiday lets, it's covered by the LCCA, which because there's no real separation. Everything is pretty much looked at as a whole, and that kind of puts lenders off if your intention is to. So I will often get asked the question from people from the UK or elsewhere in the world, why aren't there any buy-to-let mortgages in Spain? Well, that's the reason. Because you're going to use the property for business purposes, not for residential. And so therefore different rules should apply. Because you're investing, you're playing the investment. It's like investing in the stock market. Well, if you lose your money, you lose your money. It was your choice.
And in the UK then, because it's not the buy-to-let purchases are not regulated, you say, under the regulations. How does that affect the mortgage broker? Because are you still do you need still to be regulated and a license to perform intermediary activities for those loans?
No, not necessarily, but most lenders will only work with regulated companies.
Yeah, sure, but it's a grey zone, or is
not really?
Is it a clear difference?
Yeah, because if you're a lender, you would prefer to work with a regulated company than not. You know, because a regulated mortgage broker will have standards across the board, and so therefore a lender will generally only work with regulated mortgage brokers just for their own peace of mind, for their own safety. Yeah.
For instance, that you could see between UK regulations, traditions, and Spain. So one of them I know is refinancing. And we mentioned this here before. So in Spain, the mortgage should be applied for if you want it before you make the decision to buy. And,
yes.
And can you tell us a little bit about if you want a mortgage on your residential property, can you refinance?
If I already own the property?
Yes.
And I already have a mortgage?
No, you don't have a mortgage.
Okay, yeah, you can refinance for certain very, very narrow and specific things. So, for example, again, we used a €1 million scenario. I bought it cash. I'm going through this at the moment, and I want to reform. So I want to extend, or I want to, put a new roof on or something. A Spanish bank will entertain that because
you make a revaluation of the property.
You're investing in the property. They will. But if you asked, you're Swedish, get this a lot from Swedes. No, I bought it cash 2 years ago. I need now to release funds because I want to send it back to Sweden. Because interest rates are high in Sweden. I want to pay down some debt in Sweden. That's not going to happen. They will not allow it.
No, but we hear that quite often actually with Swedish buyers, that they're not taking a mortgage on the property when they buy, but they can mention to us, I might do it later. And then we have to advise them that's probably not going to be possible.
Yes, that's right.
You have to look into that now, or a builder's credit or revaluation, as you say. Yeah.
There is a secondary market. So again, there's not much competition in Spain because of the regulations, and it's something that we could do with changing because we need more competition. We need more lenders to have a healthy market. So you've got two choices. You have the traditional Spanish banks that you see on the high street, Santander, BBVA, Sabadell, Bankinter, Caixa, and all this kind of business. And then you have the other, the secondary market, where they lend on anything to anyone. But they're short-term bridging type scenarios, and we call it emergency money.
Yeah.
It should only be accessed if there is no other option, because it's extremely expensive.
Yes.
So yes, it can.
And risky for
yeah,
the clients.
very much so. We don't do much of it, but because there's got to be an alternative, it has to be. And if there isn't, then you've got to question yourself.
Yeah. And we mentioned a few more things already. I mean, I guess that any UK buyer would be a little bit surprised, or of course they're not aware of the formalities of going to a notary and signing the ACTA, because that doesn't exist in the UK, I suppose.
No. I mean, the whole notary thing is alien to it. It was alien to me when I first came here. So the whole process of signing the purchase contract at notary with all the stakeholders there, you know, it's a bit like an opera.
Yeah, it's a ceremony.
It's incredible.
Sometimes it takes hours.
It could take all day. There's 10 people around, you know, one group of lawyers, another group of lawyers, a group of agents.
Well, maybe we should explain actually with the ACTA.
Okay. So the new mortgage law means, and this is to try and stop bad practice by banks, is that a Spanish bank has to offer you the binding offer, which is the FAIN, 10 days prior to completing the deal. This has been brought in, and I've seen it at notary before, to stop banks changing criteria or changing the terms at the last minute. You think you're going to sign, you think you've agreed terms with the bank, and then the day before, on the actual day I've seen it happen, they've come back with totally different terms. And you're like, how can this be? Well, you either sign this or there's no deal. That's awful.
Yeah.
So they brought in the 10-day rule. So they have to issue the binding offer. The binding offer then has to sit. They have to send it to the notary to say that it hasn't been tampered with, and the client has to go in to notary, either themselves or via their legal representative who has power of attorney, to confirm that they understand what they're signing up for. And that's new, and that extends the time it takes to get a mortgage.
Well, that's interesting actually. What in terms of time in the UK and Spain, you know best, but if I tell you that around 2 to 3 months on an average for a mortgage here in Spain, am I right?
Yeah.
More or less.
Yeah.
So and in the UK,
again, if you're looking at a remortgage, just changing from one bank to another, in the UK that's very common. Every 3-5 years you change lenders. It's just admin.
Yeah.
And there's no notaries.
But for a new one then.
Yeah, it takes.
When you buy your property.
Okay, so the UK is different to what we're experiencing, because in the UK we have things called chains, property chains. So there could be a chain of 5 people. So because it's all residential mainly. So I was a first-time buyer. Now I'm looking to upgrade. The people who I'm buying from are going to move to another house. They're moving to another house. So it can take a long time for the chain to actually occur. But if there is no chain, you're looking at the same sort of timescales.
All right. So no real surprises in terms of time for UK buyers.
It's still the same.
Still same. All right.
Yeah. Banks are not the most efficient.
And it's not less paperwork.
No, it's the same sort of paperwork.
Yeah, and it's a lot nowadays.
It's a lot of paperwork.
Yeah. All right, Marc, anything else that comes to mind when you think about the UK perspective and Spanish, and when we compare them and the routines and processes that you have experienced?
I mean, that in the UK, this is what people need to be aware of. It's not the same. A mortgage is a mortgage, of course, whether it's in Spain or in the UK or Sweden or anywhere. But it's the differences that can trip you up. You know, I mentioned there's a lack of competition. Well, in the UK, you've got 120 different lenders that are active at any one time. The amount of products that are available is just off the charts compared to Spain. The Spanish bank will assess your case individually and will price it individually. In the UK, there are thousands of different products and they're sold in tranches. So we get calls, oh no, I want a 2-year fixed rate. Or I want a 5-year fixed rate. Or, you'll get what the bank want to offer you, really. We can make suggestions, but you're not in the driving seat here, it's the bank. Now, if you're a really good client, we can really, really hammer them down and really push for exactly what you're looking for. But don't assume that they're not going to roll the red carpet out for you and give you all the different choices. It's very much what they're prepared to give you at that given time. 5 years ago, there's a new product that Spanish banks are offering called Mixto, which is a part fixed rate and then it switches on. So that's the product that the English person will understand, because we do 5-year fixes there all the time. Whereas before the interest rate rises, it was either fixed or variable. That's all you get. And that, again, it's limited. It's not how it works in the UK. No, it isn't. This is what I'm saying. It isn't the same. So do not assume that it is. Always speak to someone first. If you're thinking about mortgages in Spain, speak to someone who actually knows. Because you'd be surprised how different it is. And then, you don't want to make any silly mistakes. That could cost you. It could cost you a lot of time. That's pretty important. You waste a lot of time if it doesn't come through, but you run the risk of maybe losing some money. Which is never nice.
Wise advice. All right, Mark. Thank you very much for coming in. I think we have managed to add even more good things to the UK country files, and thank you very much for that, Mark. Nice to have you.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you so much.
Thank you.